We're talking the fastest emerging industry within Web3 and perhaps the world, gaming. What is it? How can investors benefit? And how can we all participate even if we're not an investor? This is the theme of our discussion with Rudy Koch. He is the co-founder of Fenix Games. Welcome to the show.
Thank you
for joining me today. I want to talk to you about gaming and explain to the audience how we are all impacted by this very fast rising industry. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your career stats. Very impressive career. You've built Mythical Games, a unicorn gaming company. Tell us about everything you've done leading up to Fenix Games.
Yeah, I've been in the gaming industry, been making games for over 15 years. Really a passion of mine, the industry. I love being in it. Started out at Disney way back in the day on a game called Club Penguin, which was arguably the first Metaverse. It was an early pioneer out west in free to play. Really great to be on the ground floor for that because we know free to play is the dominant monetization model in games. From there, I went to Activision, worked on Call of Duty for 6 years, and then I went to Blizzard and worked on World of Warcraft for a couple of years. It was at Blizzard in 2018. I started looking at blockchain and saw an instant connection between the types of economies I'd experienced in games like World of Warcraft and what NFTs and blockchain these paradigms represented. So I left Blizzard. I founded Mythical Games in April 2018, which is an early pioneer in Web3 gaming. It was a platform technology play. Spent 4.5 years growing that into a unicorn. We hit unicorn status last year. And through that process, developed a new point of view on where I think the next 4 or 5 years are going in the sector. So I left, and with a few friends of mine, we founded Fenix Games, based out in the UAE.
World of Warcraft, one of my favorite games of all time. You were a developer of that game, right?
Yes.
Producer, more specifically?
Producer, yes.
Okay, what exactly does that entail?
Yes.
Personal interest, but
yes.
I think the audience could benefit from knowing as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was a fan too. It was a real privilege to go and walk down the same halls as all the people who created World of Warcraft all those years ago. And so it was a real thrill. But yes, I was on the development side, which means I was working with a team that actually built the game, right? And so I was working with several teams there. I was working with the class design team who would design, and iterate on the classes and how they felt and how they played and all the spells that they had. I worked on PvP with the PvP team.
Player versus player.
Player versus player. Sorry, I'm going to work on those acronyms. And then also worked on items and rewards. So any item or reward that you earned in World of Warcraft came from the team that I worked with, which was a real interesting team to work with because, now that blockchain is here and NFTs are here, it's all about digital items, right? So World of Warcraft, in a way, was a precursor to my career in Web3.
You've been in the video game industry a long time. Not everyone might not know this, but gaming is huge. It's larger than, in terms of revenue, it's larger than music and the movie industries combined.
Yes.
And so when we talk about the future of gaming, we're really talking about the future of entertainment overall. Yeah. But before we talk about the future, let's talk about the past 20 years. How do you think video games as a genre have evolved over the last 20 years?
Yes. So last year it was a $200 billion industry. I mean, it's huge, and it's really exploded over the last 10 to 20 years, thanks to mobile was a big innovation, and free to play, right? You now have mobile brought in 1 billion new gamers, and when you talk to these gamers who play on the mobile, they might not consider themselves gamers in the traditional sense, like World of Warcraft players or Call of Duty players, right? They don't sit behind a console and play. They're playing casual games or, and engaging in entertainment on their phones, but they're still gamers, right? And they're driving half of the revenue in 2022 was from mobile gamers. So mobile is really where the growth exploded in the gaming industry. And it also accessed markets that gaming hadn't been able to access before because mobile was a lot more affordable globally than consoles were. So it really made a huge impact and really made gaming a massive staple out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about a few themes I want to discuss. First, the Web3 space, which is something that you're very much involved. Yes. What exactly is Web3 gaming? Growing up playing video games, N64, yes. Mario Kart, GoldenEye, then I moved on to World of Warcraft, Counter-Strike. Yes. I play them all, okay?
Yes.
And the concept of Web3 is new to me.
Yes.
Especially as it relates to gaming. What exactly is that?
Yes, so Web3 is basically the term that's being used to describe these paradigms that are emerging out of NFTs and blockchain. Really, it's a multifaceted term that sort of talks about the technology, the paradigm, the ideologies behind all of these, right? If I was to boil it down, right, into something simple, I like to think of it like Web 1.0 was read, right? We were able to view websites on the internet and we were able to intake information. Web 2.0 was when the APIs and the platforms started coming out, and that's read and write. That meant that we were able to input our information, create accounts. Companies like Amazon came about, eBay came about, right? Web 3.0 is being seen as read, write, and own, right? And the own piece is the critical one. And this is where NFTs and blockchain play a role, is that the items now, the digital items that you accumulate, whether in games, entertainment, online, the idea is that NFTs allow you to own that now, just as much as you own the physical items that you have, like the clothes that you're wearing, right? And the idea is that there's a new generation of gamers. I call them the Minecraft generation, because the Minecraft really sort of, in my opinion, spawned this new wave of gamers who spend an incredible amount of time in the digital space. They're used to playing in sandbox environments where they get to customize and show off the things that they create, right? And so then they put an enormous amount of value into the digital experiences that they have. And now the natural thing is, well, all the value and all the creativity they pour into the games has traditionally just benefited the developer, right? Well, with blockchain and NFTs, now the player can own those creations, own those digital assets, and they can be part of the value chain. And so people say, over the last 4 years as I've been in this space, people ask me will gamers get that they can make money playing games by selling their digital items? And I say, well, they've been making money for years. Twitch streaming is a great example where these are gamers, these are fans. They're not developers, and they're making a career out of making content around the games that they love, right? So for us, blockchain and NFTs and Web3, all-encompassing term, is the opportunity to bring gamers further into the value chain and allow them to be part of these experiences that they spend so much time playing.
Okay. I remember my earlier childhood memories, some of my fondest childhood memories, sitting in a room together with my friends on an N64, playing Mario Kart, old school controllers, old school console. We didn't even have the internet back then. It was just a new thing in the early 90s.
You're describing my
Pretty much. So, for the legacy video game players who are, older millennials, if you want to call them that, why do we need Web3 is my question. Boil it down in a couple sentences or less. I mean, you described a perfect use case, but why do we need it? The enjoyment of gaming was there in the 90s, like I described, right?
It's true. When I was young, the games I played, you just had to get from start to finish as fast as you could without dying, really. Sure. But that's not it anymore. They're about sandbox open world games. These are immersive games where your social network, your identity your avatar lives in these worlds. When I was a kid, I also used to, when I bought new shoes, I'd go to recess in school and I'd show off to my friends. That happens in, digital experiences like Fortnite. Check out the skin that I got, right? Your social cred exists online. And so games have evolved. Players have evolved. And ever since we started designing games, when you were playing on the N64, and Super Nintendo, there wasn't item-driven experiences, really. When free-to-play came about, for example, and even slightly before that, there was a game called Asheron's Call, which was published by Microsoft in the late 90s, where as soon as we created games where you could earn and acquire items, and those items had utility, suddenly they had value to players. And what emerged out of that, what we call the gray markets. We didn't intend for that to happen. This is what we call emergent gameplay, right? We didn't intend for that behavior to happen, but players naturally, because they valued the items that they were collecting in their favorite games, they wanted to sell them to each other. They had value. And so gray markets emerged. World of Warcraft that I worked on, I saw firsthand how huge the gray markets. I mean, we're talking between the big games like World of Warcraft and Lineage and so on. Globally, we're talking about billions of dollars a year of gray market transactions, right? Where the developers didn't get to participate. So there's multiple reasons. There's two sort of main reasons why we need, or why blockchain is sort of the next step. I wouldn't say we need it, but what we see is a natural evolution to what's already happening in the game space, which is, this commerce that gamers have been interacting with in the gray markets. Well, let's bring that into the fold. Let's bring that into the fold and allow it. So it doesn't have to be this fringe thing where it's unregulated, it's full of fraud, right? Let's bring it into the fold, design for it, allow players to engage in this commerce and get a piece of that. So it's a two-way economy. But then also for developers, we get to participate financially and we get to grow our revenue beyond the 200 billion. Now we have a path to growing that revenue even bigger, right? And so it benefits everyone to sort of take this next step with blockchain. Simply, again, some industries, they look at blockchain and they say it's a revolutionary tech. For us, we see it sort of like as a next step into what already is sort of happening in the games industry. The buying and selling of digital items isn't something that's new to us. We've had it for 30 years.
Practically speaking, for the consumers watching the show right now, how is that different in terms of a gaming experience? A blockchain game on the web, on Web3.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What are we talking in terms of consoles, hardware, software?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because Web3 gaming has been a term used to describe this sort of innovation that's happening. What we hope is that in the next 5 years, it will just become gaming. We won't be calling it Web3 gaming, but we've come to sort of label it as that to sort of define, okay, we're now innovating with blockchain technology, NFTs and these kind of token economies. And so, you know, the way we see it is that ultimately, you're going to, as more Web3 games come out, you're going to have content. The most important thing is that we put out content that people love playing.
Right.
People play games for entertainment. It's not anything beyond that.
Sure.
You get home from work or school or whatever, you want to turn on, jump onto your favorite video game and be entertained.
You don't buy the whole movement of earning money as a gamer, not professionally. Like, no, I'm not talking about professional esports gamers who are intense.
Yeah.
They're just casual gamers who can earn a side hustle playing a game.
I do believe in that, for sure. But first and foremost, the game's got to be great, right?
It's got to be fun.
Yes, and we're very early. I mean, this is one of the problems that Fenix Games wants to tackle. We're very early. Last 5 years has been a tremendous amount of focus from the VC community, the investor community, and the startups in building infrastructure. We've gone from 3 blockchains to over 20 blockchains now, right? Now it's time to focus on the content challenges. How do we get great game developers come in and put out hit games, right? Because that's what we need to attract the audience. The average gamer is not going to care about blockchain technology. They're not going to care about private keys or gas fees or any of these kind of terms. You know, we want them to just come in, play a game. And by the way, there are items that you acquire here, they're yours to sell. So you can make money. And what we expect to happen is we expect, the gamer today is much more enterprising than the gamers when I was young, right? The reason why we have Twitch streaming and people making a career out of these things and making money is because they're much more enterprising. They see opportunities, we give them the right tools, they generate a whole new sub-economy within games, which we call content creation or esports are examples of that, right? So now we say, let's give them the tools of being able to buy and sell items legitimately in the game experiences, and we expect that there's going to be an emerging segment of enterprising players who will make money, and that's what they enjoy.
Okay. A blockchain game, is it secure?
It's as secure as the blockchain is, right. I mean, blockchain infrastructure, again, a lot of investments in this space, but it's still an emerging sector. We don't know the edges of this technology yet, right? Until we have 1 billion players playing these games.
You're
right?
a content producer, if I could classify.
We call ourselves a publisher.
A publisher, right?
Yes.
Are you partnering with a distributor? Like, if I were to name a few, Xbox, PS5, platforms, how are you distributing these games?
Yeah, we hope to at some point, but these companies are still sort of trying to figure out where they sit when it comes to blockchain and Web3. Right. When the traditional gaming industry looks at this sector, it's a very hit-driven industry. So they see risk, right? Like, how do we design for this space? How do we make money off this space? How do we, design this into our game so it's a good experience? These are all questions that haven't been answered yet. Right. And these are the content problems I was mentioning that we want to help solve, yes. Right? And so, for the time being, we don't have an Xbox in Web3. We don't have a PlayStation in Web3. But this is an opportunity for new startups to come in and sort of innovate and solve these kind of problems, right? The one thing that Xbox and PlayStation provided us was player liquidity, right? You've got a marketplace where players meet content. Well, if we don't have that in Web3, how do we do that, right? And these are examples of the barriers preventing game developers from coming into the space.
You would think that it would make sense for the top game publishers and studios to want to get into this space because it's emerging, there's fast growth, there's a lot of potential for making money and investments. Why are they, I don't want to say falling behind, but why are they falling behind?
Yes, because again, it represents risk. Right. Traditional games is a hit-driven business, right? If you statistically look at the Web 2 games industry, if you're a team that knows what they're doing, you've got a 10% hit rate. It's
not an issue of the game itself. Like if somebody asked you to put Call of Duty on the blockchain, could you do it?
Absolutely you could. But the risk to Activision is they've got a game that's working. Right? Why mess with that until we're sure? And we're at a stage with blockchain and Web3 that accretive value to a business like Activision or EA or any of these guys, we have to demonstrate that, right? And reduce the risk for them so they feel comfortable coming in, right? Because again, 10% hit rate in the games industry, which means 9 out of 10 games fail, right? So and that's without blockchain. Now we add blockchain security issues that we don't understand, token economies, we're still learning how to design, right? All of this represents risk. And so this is why Fenix Games exists. We have expertise, we have experience working in this Web3 game space for 5 years. We've started to pave our way in solving these kind of issues so that we can go to the Web2 traditional game developers and say, okay, you guys know how to make great games. Let us help you with the rest, right?
For the investors watching who want to participate in this space, because it is a very fast-growing industry, what are some of the vehicles they can take? Investment vehicles, investment instruments, direct investment instruments that they could use to participate in gaming?
Yes, I mean, so there's been an incredible amount of proliferation of investment into infrastructure, like I've said, and I get it. It's a very lucrative. It has been a very lucrative
besides
business.
Buying Activision stock.
Yes,
which is as direct as you can get.
Yes. I mean, really, it is an opportunity. What we believe is that sort of the EAs of Web3 are amongst us right now, starting out. It's a great place to come and invest for the future of gaming. The fact that these traditional game studios like EA aren't coming in so quickly, for obvious reasons, is an opportunity for everybody else who's coming and innovating in the space. If you look at, let's say, Clash of Clans on mobile, that was a studio that didn't exist until mobile and free-to-play became a thing. Right. And it's a huge, everybody knows the name, right? So we're going to see that happen in the Web3 space. We're going to see new contenders, Fenix Games, one of them, come out and really take a leadership position.
Mainly private market companies, right?
Correct.
Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about the future of the Metaverse. Another buzzword that we hear at pretty much every single conference I go to.
Yeah. What's the Metaverse?
What is it? Especially in relation to the gaming world, What does the gaming metaverse look like? For me, it's just World of Warcraft.
Yeah, this is a big topic.
But that's been around for 20 years.
Let me take a stab at it.
Yeah, please.
So, I mean, yes, metaverses have existed already in games, right? Or the idea of metaverses. So World of Warcraft, Second Life, Roblox, these are examples of arguably metaverses, right?
For the people watching who may not be gamers, but still want to understand, what are these? Describe just in a few words. What is World of Warcraft? What is Roblox? Oh, let's just stick with World of Warcraft. Yes. What is this game? Because we've been talking about it. What are the mechanics? Why is it akin to the metaverse?
Yeah. So World of Warcraft is basically what we called an MMORPG, a massive multiplayer online role-playing game, right? Where you can go into the game and you can take on an avatar that becomes your identity. You can be a warrior or a mage or a rogue and live out this sort of fantasy in this game of running around this world, this alien world where your friends are on there with you. That's a big sort of factor in these sort of
and to give people a scale of how big this world was. I think from one end to the main map to the other is like the equivalent of if you were to scale that to real life, I think it's the equivalent size of a Manhattan.
Yes.
I believe. Yeah.
Yes. And then at its peak, it was something like 11 million players were all in this world together, interacting with each other. Yes. So there was a time where me and all my friends were seeing each other more in World of Warcraft than we were seeing each other in real life. right? That's the metaverse.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So now what they're saying, what the metaverse is as it emerges in Web3 is saying, yes, we do spend a lot of time in the digital space. We value the digital space, right? In the same way that we buy fancy clothes in the real world, we want to buy fancy things for our digital avatars because they represent who we are in the digital space, right? And so metaverse is about bringing your identity into the digital space and existing and owning that digital footprint, right? And so that's kind of how I'm interpreting it. So when but yeah, I mean, it's a big word.
Practically speaking, what does that look like? Because, all right, World of Warcraft, I'm sitting in front of a computer, keyboard, mouse, monitor, I'm playing a video game. Is that still the future?
Yeah, with games, yes. I mean, we at Fenix Games focus more on mobile because mobile is just a bigger market and where we believe Web3 is going to come out of that mobile cohort of developers. They're the ones who are going to figure out Web3 because they've built a discipline of data-driven development, analytics.
How do we take the concept of living in a virtual world, like it doesn't have to be World of Warcraft, it could be Sims, for example, and apply that to a non-gaming environment, let's say for work? Could I have an avatar and communicate, let's say, Rudy, I really want to meet you today. I don't feel like leaving my house. Yes. Is there an additional added value of having an avatar versus just having a phone call?
Well, that's the thing. We could just do that on Zoom a lot easier, right? So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be explored in Metaverse. Right. As I mentioned, Metaverse and Web3 Metaverse and Web3 gaming are two tracks of innovation in the space. They're both important. There's some overlap. We're focused on the gaming side. We want to bring games into Web3, tokenize digital assets, and allow for that commerce. There's another set of startups that are focusing on what the metaverse is, and I think there's a long path to. The one thing I will say that's kind of interesting, because again, going back to players spend an enormous time in the digital space, physical brands have started to catch on to this, right? And so what they are realizing is if we want to be relevant for the next 50 years, we need to be present in these digital worlds.
I'm really curious as to how AI will be integrated with Web3 and the metaverse. Specifically, let's take a metaverse.
Sure.
We talk about, again, going back to the World of Warcraft example, I think it's a good example. NPCs, non-player characters. They're just characters built inside the game, run through code. They interact with you through a series of pre-scripted code.
Yes, that's
to simplify.
Yes.
Okay. In the future, potentially these NPCs could have a life of their own, think outside the box, interact with you in ways that perhaps the developer may not have. It would be like me talking to you in real life, right?
They could also learn from the last 2 million players they met and adapt to when they meet you based on that.
Scary,
and that's terrifying.
Right. So I could potentially enter, this is going to the realm of sci-fi, I could enter into a metaverse, interact with something or someone, and not really know if that's an NPC or a real person.
Yes, it's true. And that's starting to get away from what we know as games. So we'll stay in our lane.
But would you consider integrating AI into your games?
We're going to explore it. Right, I mean, blockchain and tokenomics are a huge paradigm in and of themselves. The industry needs to wrangle this first. AI is coming out of nowhere and sort of T-boning us. Okay, now how does this fit? Right. Okay, we'll figure that out. Right. But right now, what we're focused on is blockchain, because blockchain, we think is going to we're convinced that blockchain is going to have a much bigger impact than AI. It's also going to have a bigger impact than what mobile and free-to-play had.
Okay, perfect. Rudy, finally, what can you tell us about Fenix Games? I know it's still, a lot you can't disclose to the public yet. What can you tell us? What's next?
Absolutely. So we launched in November last year. So yes, we're just getting off the ground, but we are about to announce some really, really exciting partnerships. We're not we were a publisher. We are working with some incredible partners to set up the ecosystem of infrastructure and blockchains and wallets that we want to work with. We're going to announce some of those relationships and those partnerships, which are going to set the foundation for some of the great games that we're going to bring in over the next 12 months. And so really all I can say is that, keep an eye on some of the conferences that are coming up in the gaming industry. We're going to be there. We're going to be making announcements. And we're really excited to be part of the space. The Web3 community, is still very early. It's still very small. We're part of a great group of innovators that are really pushing the envelope. And, in the next 5 years, we believe that there's going to be some major hit games that rival some of the games that you love that are going to be built in Web3.
Looking forward to it. As an avid gamer myself, I can't wait. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching the show. Stay tuned.